Welcome to Off the Grid, a podcast for small business owners who want to leave social media without losing all their clients.
Let's go off the grid. Okay. Let's go off the grid. Okay. I know that you really want to put your phone away. Yeah. Let's go off the grid.
Hello, and welcome to Off the Grid, a podcast about leaving social media without losing all your clients, or this season about the sticky, tricky, uncomfortable questions we're all asking about social media and online business in this chaotic era. I feel like the word chaotic doesn't even do enough to describe all the atrocities that we're seeing unfold around us and the deconstruction of our national government and everything else that's going on. But I'm here with you trying to make sense of it all and find our way forward in business and life together. So thank you for tuning in to the 101st episode of Off the Grid. I am your host, Amelia Fruby, and today I have an amazing guest. When I went to write the show notes for this episode, the first sentence I came up with every time was, Cher Hale is one of my favorite people on the internet, because it's true. Every time her newsletter lands in my inbox, I am gleeful. I am so ready to read it. I am so grateful for her lens that she is bringing to the world and the body of work that she is constructing. And you, dear listener, are in for a treat because you get a whole hour of her wisdom this week on the podcast. Today, Cher and I are going to talk about attention, which is very exciting for me because you may have heard that I am also writing a book about attention. It's called Your Attention is Sacred, Except on Social Media. And I made some big announcements about that book last month in the Clubhouse. So if you want to know everything to do with the book, you'll want to head to the show notes and join the Clubhouse. That is our private podcast and newsletter space on Substack. It's where I share all of the behind the scenes details that I'm not always cozy comfy with putting out here for thousands of people to hear each week. So you can join for just $5 a month. Head to the link in the show notes. And when you get there, you'll find an episode all about my book writing process and some big decisions I've made, including when the book might be coming your way. So if you want to hear about the book, go hang out in the Clubhouse. But if you want to hear about attention, you are in the right place because Cher and I are talking about attention today. In this episode, we really get into the deep wounding that many of us have around attention from our childhoods, where we may have been told to stop doing things for attention or to stop seeking attention, or that we were being disruptive and taking everybody's attention away from the teacher, perhaps. Cher takes us right to those moments to help us begin to find ways to transmute and heal them so that we can be comfortable asking for attention in our businesses. And then, of course, because this is off the grid, we go deep and then we pull right back out to the practical. And this episode is full of tips, tricks, strategies, and advice for ways to get more attention for your business. So if you want to grow an audience, build a community, get your work in front of more eyes and ears, you're going to love this episode. You're also going to want to stick around to the end because in the second half of the episode, Cher and I unpack this amazing resource that she's created that's called 20 Ways to Amplify Attention for Under-Recognized Voices. And in that second half of the show, we really get into what does it mean to amplify attention for yourself and others, and how can we all do this together? Like, how can we create our own network effect that doesn't rely on all these platforms to give it to us? Like, we can do that if we are amplifying our own work and each other's. So you're definitely going to want to stick around to hear all about that. And I think I've said enough about how great this episode is going to be. So let me tell you a bit more about Cher real quick, and then we'll dive right in. Cher Hale is the founder and director of Ginkgo PR, an agency that uses public relations to create a more equitable media landscape. As a Taiwanese Black American woman, Cher is passionate about leveraging the power of the media to take back narratives that have been traditionally told for under-recognized authors and entrepreneurs. One of the ways she does this is by highlighting how the act of asking for attention has been weaponized against us. That's exactly what we're going to start off with today. So let's dive into my conversation with Cher Hale. Hi, Cher. Welcome to Off the Grid.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, I am so thrilled to have you. Before we hit record, we were having our mutual admiration moment, which is, we're meeting for the first time synchronously, I suppose. And it's so nice to, I don't know, just have that moment where you're like, I love your work. And then you're like, I love your work. And then, and I feel like I share that to say that it's kind of the whole vibe of today's conversation is like, how can we do more of that more often with and for each other so that we can kind of all be uplifted together. That's the thesis statement for today. So if that's enough for you, dear listener, you can pause here and you've got the gist. But I hope you'll go through the specifics with us because so much of what I love about your work, Cher, is both that it's obviously built on this deep value system, but it's also incredibly practical. It's okay, here are the values. So we're going to do this, 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 and that. Or here's your menu of options. So by the end of this conversation, we will have not only walked through the whole value system, but also a lot of options all around attention and getting attention and having attention and wanting attention and not getting attention and all of the implications of those things. So I want to start with your work and your newsletter. And I'm curious, can you just tell us a bit about what you do and why you launched your newsletter that's called Doing It for the Attention last year?
Yes, of course. So I am a publicist. That is the most generic term or label that I can give myself. And I work primarily with under-recognized authors and entrepreneurs. And I used to say that these are BIPOC individuals, queer individuals, but now I say it's anybody who has been targeted by oppressive systems. That's the population I want to work with, and those are the stories I want to amplify. I myself am multiracial. I'm both Taiwanese and Black. I'm a single mom, and my mother was an immigrant from Taiwan. She's no longer with us, and a part of her life is much of the reason why I tell stories in the way that I do today. Because in her 40s, she developed a passion for writing very saucy romance novels set in the Italian countryside. There's a lot of BDSM in these stories, and I was like, okay, Mom, interesting. But she was so passionate about wanting to publish these stories. And unfortunately, before she passed, didn't have a chance to. And in the aftermath of her death, I just kept asking myself, I need to do something with this. And I realized, oh, I have the skill set. I have the skill set and the value set to tell stories like hers and like mine so that we can take back our collective narratives from the media and tell it with our own voices, reducing stigma and stereotypes and bias along the way. And so when I originally had a newsletter called Pitch Slapped. It was very kitschy and cute, but it was also very boring, Amelia, I will say.
I liked it, but I get it.
Yes, it was very practical. Let's put it that way. I sent podcast suggestions to people, and it was my way of creating an accessible format for capturing visibility without hiring a publicist. So the heart was there, like most things are in my work, but the delivery was off. And I kept thinking, I really am craving an outlet for self-education and then self-reflection to kind of chronicle my journey toward radicalization. Where am I at on the spectrum? What questions do I still have? And can we talk about those together, please? So when I was brainstorming the concept, this idea of how kids do things just for attention just kept resurfacing for me. And I was like, I fiercely don't believe in that as a stigma, first of all. And I kept thinking, the only reason that we think kids do it for the attention is because we're unwilling to give them what they need in that moment. And we were taught that too as children. And isn't this some kind of scam that we're all believing from a very young age, and then bringing that ideology into our homes, our careers, our internal lives, our relationships, our liberation work?
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw those dots connect, especially with how I am professionally paid to ask for attention, it was over for me. I was deep in the hole. I was hooked. And for the past 6 months, I've been in deep reflection and education around this concept from all different facets, as we'll discuss today. And I want to be clear, right? Like, this is a process. I don't know that much about asking for attention. But I think Adrienne Marie Brown says this in Emergent Strategy, that I am going an inch wide and a mile deep. And that's what I'm doing here with this work.
I love how you're connecting these dots between this like childhood wounding many of us may have around being told we're doing something for the attention in a derogatory kind of way, or being told that we need too much attention or we're taking too much of someone's attention, or all of this messaging I remember very clearly getting as a kid, if not directly from adults in my life, like from the ether. It's very much present and there as a story and a narrative and a sort of punishing narrative at that. And connecting that all the way to, okay, this is a podcast for small business owners and creatives. Like, what does our work need? It needs attention. Why are we doing it? Maybe not just for the attention, but also for the attention, right? Like, we need to gather attention around our creative work, and we need to harness that attention like for the sake of something else almost. And being really clear about that, it's hard to unravel, I think. And, I work with a lot of people who have a lot of fear around visibility, being seen, being heard, or like they want to create their work. They want more attention for it, but like the path between those things and all the feelings that come between them is so tangled. I think because it like is rooted in these like childhood woundings and stories. So I'm curious if we could kind of begin with that person in mind, because you and I, like you are a publicist working in PR. I am a podcaster who has always been a bit of like a ham who loves attention. Like I love to, what do they say? Like, ham it up. I love attention. I just do. But for the people out there who are like, I'm super uncomfortable doing it for the attention or asking for attention or receiving attention, what do you say to them in these moments?
Yes, that's a very layered question. And I think from the base level that we have already pointed out is that we received our love and belonging and safety from our families. And if they told us that we shouldn't be doing this, we shouldn't be attention seeking, employing this behavior, then we're going to believe that. And we're going to believe that deeply. So number one, it's okay that you feel that way. Number two, there are ways now that we can resource safety in our lives, because I think that's the core of what makes asking for attention as a micro skill possible. So my favorite thing to tell people, and that has fundamentally changed my own life, is nervous system work. And that comes in a variety of flavors on a very long menu of possibilities, right? So for me, it looked like EMDR therapy, Safe and Sound Protocol, which is like an audio program, Qigong, which is an ancient Chinese practice, Yoga Nidra. I mean, there are a variety of things that you can do to resource safety in your body. And as a result, expand the capacity that you have for joy, for connection, which is really what we're talking about here, right? When you ask for attention, you're asking for connection. You're asking for belonging. And if we don't have that safety resource inside of us, it's really difficult to make that ask in a way that feels authentic in our bodies. And what matters most is what's happening in our bodies.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you've taken it back to the body, because I feel like so often in our, hyper digital era, when we're asking for attention or when we need attention or want attention for something in our business or our lives, like we're kind of just going to a computer screen or a phone screen, and like attention is a very like ambiguous, I guess, just like likes or numbers on a screen, right? We don't feel the embodiment of it. In a way that in the past, when you asked for attention and you maybe got on a stage in front of 10 people or 10,000 people, you can like feel very clearly like the bodies are in the room or they're not in the room, right? And I remember this even from hosting events or when I was an academic, like speaking at conferences. It was so different to speak to a room of 5 people or a room of 50 people or 500 people, right? But on my phone, I can't feel that in the same way, right? Like if I post something, I can see the number, but it's not bodies in front of me and I have a different experience of that attention. And I think I share that to say, I think part of what it's done is it's like flattened our sense of the scales of attention. And so we don't always anticipate how different an amount of attention may feel when it's like all happening virtually. And for me personally, then sometimes I've gotten a lot of attention and I'm like, oh no, this is too much. That's where the nervous system stuff comes in. Like I'll go outside of my sort of window of tolerance and I won't even realize it's happened because I wasn't counting how many people were in the Zoom room or like noticing. But I'm trying to get to something like there's a way that attention in a digital space can feel pretty ethereal, whereas like in an embodied way, it's like very material and real.
Yes, I hear you. And I will say, as an example, I used to be a super user of Instagram. I no longer am. But I was a super user and I would write these long, introspective, thoughtful quote, like captions. What are they called now? Captions beneath the picture. And really like hope, I think, secretly for authentic interaction, for authentic engagement. And then always feel a little bit hollow when people's comments were like, beautiful, or give me a like. So an example is that my mom's death anniversary, I used to post a picture with like a thoughtful caption and just feel kind of like still lonely at the end of the day. And her death anniversary this past year, instead, I looked through photos of us and then sent them to individual people, our friends and family, and said, hey, do you remember this? And then was able to have beautiful, like engaging, deep interaction with those individual people. And it was fulfilling in a way that I hadn't ever experienced on social media. But it was still on my phone, right? We still had this technology medium. And I think Jenny Odell says this really beautifully when she talks about how social media is a false target for self-reflection, for curiosity, and for community, which is how it feels, right? Like we think we'll get what we need out of it, but it's a false target.
Oh, I think that's so interesting. It's making me feel like, or it's making me reflect on the differences sometimes between a desire for attention and a desire for connection. And that's not necessarily to like put those in a hierarchy. Like I think both are important and meaningful, but they are different. Yeah, that's sort of like often when I'm desiring attention, I want a form of like validation that I might seek online or on a social media app. I mean, I won't personally, but in the past I did. It's kind of like, okay, this may be the sort of form. I want somebody to affirm this or like it or validate it. And I'll kind of put it out there and see if that happens. But it's very different when I want like actual connection. I'm typically going to a specific person or group of people and I'm wanting a response from them. And I think part of what's tricky here, and Jenny Odell talks about this as well, is the sort of like the desire for belonging is underneath all of that. But the types of belonging we get from those experiences are very different. And this is why I love talking about attention, because it brings up so many of the experiences and concepts that are just core to who we are as people, as human beings. And it's all wrapped into the topic of attention.
Yeah. And I will say too that when I think about how we tell children not to attention seek, I would go so far as to say that it's an act of violence against them because it's the first line where we disconnect them from their needs and their bodies. And so as a result, obfuscate their vocabulary around it. So the experience we have today as adults where we're like, well, do we want attention or connection or like, do we need a nap?
Yeah.
Because that language was never given to us. And so we're kind of picking it up as we go along now and trying it on to see, does this fit? Is that really what I needed? Sometimes the answer is no. And so I would say that we are collecting a vocabulary for our needs in relationship to attention, belonging, and connection.
No, that just feels so true and so wise to me. And I'm so grateful you articulated it that way. What I'm about to say is preposterous, but I want to just like take us out of the childhood wound a little bit. But I want to kind of relocate this conversation in the context of like attention and small business or like artistic practice. Because I feel like we talked a little bit about like, okay, we were all told, quote unquote, not to be attention seekers, but we can reclaim doing it for the attention now. Like we can reclaim that if we're on board with doing it for the attention. Like as business owners, what are we actually doing? Like what are some of the things that we do for attention or could be doing if we want more attention in our business?
Yes. So once we clarify that, yes, we do in fact need and want attention, which is an important distinction to make as you're beginning this process, right? Because I think we will block ourselves energetically if we're like, I don't really need it, but like, let me pitch myself. There's a few different levels, right? From a relationship marketing standpoint, which I know is your jam, you can do connection calls. You can just reach out for people and say, hey, I want to know how to support your work. And of course, in turn, there will be reciprocity there. You can ask people to leave you reviews. You can ask for testimonials. You can ask people to send their people to a certain link that you have that's live, a launch, for example. Or you can pitch yourself, right, on a larger stage to podcasts like this, to editorials, to other Substacks. There are a lot of options for just saying, hey, I'm here. I have something to share. Are you interested?
Yeah. Oh, and that last part just really reminded me yet again of the childhood wounding of like the stigma of like being the kid in class who raised their hand for every single question the teacher asked, right? Like there's so much messaging around how uncool that is. I definitely took that in as like the smart girl in the class and then being like sort of conditioned by my peers to like sit back and not seem eager in that way. So yet another thing we have to overcome when we're wanting attention or needing attention. I also want to go back to that where you started with that distinction and kind of being really clear. I love what you said around like we might have internal blocks around attention, and if we don't clear them, like no amount of pitching our way out of it is going to really land if we can't genuinely be aligned with that request for attention. I also think that part of how social media really warps this for people is we can get confused about the kinds of attention we want and how much attention we want or need. And also, I think there's a distinction between wanting and needing attention. Like sometimes I talk about this a lot on the show, but like Softer Sounds doesn't need a huge amount of attention. We need a very small community of clients who refer us to their friends and peers, and that's how the business runs. And it took me a while to realize that like, okay, cool, Softer Sounds doesn't need much attention, but like I, Amelia, desire attention. Like I want to be a content creator. I'm thrilled to be a podcaster. I like to be out in the world meeting people, and I like to have them listening to my shows and listening to me. And it was helpful to realize like, oh, okay, interesting. First thing I had to realize was like, this business doesn't need a lot of attention. I don't need to have some type of like broadcast channel for it. I don't need to grow an audience for it. But also, I have a desire for attention. And maybe I want to do something else, like start this podcast that kind of serves that part of me. But I think on social media, where everything is a personal brand, everything is about more followers all of the time, there's no space to disentangle those things. There's no space to consider, like, strategically, what types and how much attention does your business need personally? What's your relationship to attention? And what are your desires around it? Like, it goes back, I think, to that flattening I was trying to articulate earlier. Like, I think social media just kind of turns attention into one thing, which is like the follower count, sort of. And it's so more multifaceted than that.
Yeah. And I think to your point here, there are a few elements that we need in our journey to uncovering, I guess, what our relationship to attention is. And you said beautifully that there's so much happening on social media. There's so much happening in our lives, quite frankly. When do we have the space or the solitude to really get quiet with ourselves and identify those needs? So I can't help but think about how there's a beautiful poet named Martha Postlewaite, and she has a poem about where she says, create a clearing in the dense forest of your life. And that just sticks so deeply with me. Like, yes, we are living in these dense forests, and how beautiful would it be to come across a pond with a clearing and a beautiful mushroom cap to sit on. Fairy style is what I always imagine. Because we need that space to identify, okay, here I am in my business. Here's the people that I want attention from. And how are the ways in which I'd like to bridge that gap? For me, it comes down to essay writing and conversations like this. But for others, it might be an influencer style situation. It differs.
When working with a client and we're talking about this, I'm always guided by two things. One is like, what are the things you feel called to do and create? Like you said, like essay style writing for you. For me, it's obviously podcasting. And then also, like, what does your business need? And so, can we talk about that's where we can get kind of like the scope and the scale and the type of people based on the type of work that you do and who it needs to be in front of and what that requires. And it's how so many off the grid listeners will have the sorts of aha moments of like, oh, I run a small service based business. I don't need a social media audience. Or how other people will realize, oh, like I actually do desire to be a content creator. I have to build an audience. I'm going to need much more attention than other types of businesses might if we're quantifying attention in terms of like eyes or ears on your work. But going back to the initial question I asked you, I loved the sort of list you were sharing, and I want to add to now, like the different ways that we garner attention around our businesses. So we can pitch our work and ask, that's a direct ask for attention, right? To say, raise that hand and say, hello, I am here. Would you consider bringing me into your sphere? Like, I love this. And so much of the content we create, I mean, content creation is a bid for attention in a certain way. And if you're out putting work out there and you're sharing it publicly, it's an ask for people to pay attention to it. And then there are all these things we do to try to help them pay attention to it. So that may be the pitching, that may be the asking for reviews, that may be the telling people what's possible, the asking your peers to share your work. I think that one important part of being in business is just this cultivated skill of learning to ask for attention. So you're doing it for the attention and you're asking for the attention. And both parts of it are really important for a small business owner.
And I would say that, like any skill, it takes practice, right? And I think more importantly, an element of fun. Like that's been really important to me lately when I think about what makes this feel easy and sustainable and possible. It's that I have a lot of fun while asking for attention. So I routinely take off the professional hat that I cultivated for many, many years and sound uncomfortably like myself when I'm emailing people, where there's a little bit of edge of, oh, should I say that? Will that joke come across? Is that funny? And I say it anyway, because I want to have fun. And more importantly, I want to showcase my humanity through the ask.
Yeah. Oh, I love this so much. Like, it's just being with your voice and letting it shine through. I'm curious, hearing you say this, like, what are the types of things you're doing with and for your clients where you're helping them get more attention?
Yeah. And so I'm primarily pitching them for podcast tours. So if they have a book coming out about 6 months prior, we start formulating, okay, where are we going to pitch you for? When will it go live? Who are we targeting? So I'll pitch them for podcast tours. Also pitch things like editorials. So that's like kind of like your Forbes or your Fast Company, but also things like Substack, because it's a burgeoning medium. And also in select cases, I'll pitch them for speaking, which is a lever to pull for attention. It's just right now, as publicists, we're seeing that paid speaking, podcast, and paid newsletters are the 3 primary places where you can receive massive engagement. Or if you want to use like the, I don't know, annoying term, conversions.
I'm not afraid of talking about conversions on this podcast because I think it brings up another aspect of, the difference between being a small business owner or like a practicing artist and being perhaps an influencer is that as small business owners, like we're asking for attention for the sake of something else, typically getting someone to buy something from our business, right? And as an influencer, your job is actually just to get more and more attention so that you can sell that attention to brands. But like the attention itself, you're not making a transaction with those people paying attention to you. You're making a transaction with a brand that you're then bringing to their attention. And I think that these are very different things that can get conflated. Like when I say it this way, I think some people bristle because they're like, well, I'm not building an audience. I'm like growing a community around my work and I'm just in service and I just want to give to them and provide value. And all of that is 100% true. Like I'm on board with all of that. But also, if you want to make a living financially from your work, you will have to learn the art of turning that attention into a type of financial investment or buy-in or purchasing from your company. So there is a so what on the other side of the audience building or attention gathering process. And what I love about your work specifically is that it always reminds me that so what is not just my business's bottom line. Like I can actually turn attention into so many things. Some of them can be conversions to clients, sure, but there are these other things we can do with attention once we have it. So, could you talk a little bit about your approach to transferring, directing, and divesting attention?
Yeah, so once we have embraced our need for attention
Yes.
and we are actively asking for it, once we have it in our hands, there are a few things that we can do. We can transfer it or share it with others by saying things like, hey, have you heard of this person's work? Oh, I think that this person would be an amazing fit for your podcast. Or read this book. You have to read it right now, right? Like these are things that we can do to transfer attention. We can also, when we're in the space, be really artful about directing attention, creating intentional experiences so that we can leave people transformed, quite frankly. I think it sounds a little bit cliche at this point with like transformational coaching, but there is an element of truth to that, right? An element of need to that. So we leave them transformed by our work. And then we can divest our attention. And can we all just please do more of that? Because there's so much energy and time and creativity that we can reclaim as ours and use for the work that we're doing and use to give to others. So those are the three main ways that I see us using our attention once we have it, beyond, of course, making money and feeling good about ourselves.
Beyond those two fundamental things, we have all these other options. No, I love this though. I mean, I think obviously we want to feel good about ourselves. We want to make money in our businesses. I feel like those are important. And also, I just talk to so many people who are feeling this sense of like, there's so many awful things happening in the world right now. And just like, I mean, I say this to my friends all the time. I'm like, I can't believe I'm just like going to my little internet business, logging on for my little job every day. Like, I want to feel connected to a deeper purpose. I want to feel like my work has a greater impact. I want to feel like I'm actually like interjecting in and shifting these horrible things that I see happening. And I think that's where these ways of transferring, directing, and divesting attention can come in. It reminds me that like, okay, business building for me is an audience building practice. And when I have that audience, it doesn't just have to be about my business. It can actually be about all of these other things. And I see beautiful examples of my peers doing that. I had a conversation with Cody Cook Parrott on their podcast, Common Shapes, about some of the ways that they think about talking about political events and promoting different causes and fundraising efforts in their work, and how I've tried to think about that in relationship to this podcast. And, you know, I'm always in awe of friends who are writing about things happening in the world or donating portions of their revenue and income or hosting community fundraisers through their platforms. These are all ways of doing this work. And then, of course, Off the Grid is one huge effort to get people to divest attention from social media. So all of this, I suppose, is just me reminding myself and all of us that, like, we're gathering attention for the sake of enjoying it and deploying it in other ways.
Yeah, and I will say, too, that the lesser known element that I don't discuss as much because it's not as connected to business as I can see it now is the act of demanding attention. And so I see as we build our capacities to ask for attention and to receive it, we are also building our influence, our social capital. And what do we do with that? We can then demand attention in the areas and for the people that we see fit. So it is the VP of Taiwan, the first VP of Taiwan, Liu Xiaolian, literally renting a Mississippi paddle boat, going up the East River with a sign affixed that says, "Welcome Taiwan to the UN," and anchoring it right in front of the United Nations in 95 at their 50th anniversary party. It's Mona Heltahawi, the commentator and activist, going down to the subway and tagging anti-Muslim ads and relishing in her imprisonment and her arrest because she wanted that attention. She was demanding attention for this specific need. Right? There are countless examples of people, once they have this influence, saying, okay, now I know what to do with it. And I am demanding that all of you divest your attention from these structures, these power structures, and put it over here instead, because this is what really matters.
What powerful examples, and so important to bring here. And just continuing to connect the way that, actually, like, our creative practices, our online businesses can be sites where we are experimenting with and learning how to garner and gather attention so that we can build influence and use that in other ways. And also, what's coming up for me there is like back to all the nervous system work you started us with, right? Like, we have to start somewhere. You don't just like one day go demand attention in these super powerful ways if you've just been like hanging out at your house, not talking to anybody for 10 years, right? Like, you cultivate that ability to ask for attention, to receive attention, to require attention, to demand attention over time. And then you can make these like a bigger, that can allow you to do these like kind of larger scale, bigger audience, more high stakes demands sorts of things with the attention.
Because then you have more margin, right? During the Greensboro sit-ins in North Carolina, they talked about how students were the ones who had the most margin to demand these changes, and that when members of the Black community even supported them verbally, they were fired, they were threatened with violence. There was a direct correlation to their livelihoods and their lives because of saying like, oh yeah, I want to pay attention to this. The students have a lot more margin. And so in my mind, I mean, even in what we call cancel culture, the more influence you have, the more margin you have. And it can be risky, but what other option do we have, right? I'm not going to sit back and let the right take over the world.
Ugh, definitely not doing that. Influence and privilege here become closely related, right? So it's like the purpose of acknowledging and accounting for privilege isn't the sort of like 21st century identity politics of like, great, I listed all my privilege so I can just feel guilty about it and sit and do nothing with that except feel worse and more ashamed. It's actually so privilege can be deployed like for the sake of these changes that need to happen and these different worlds we want to build, right? And similarly, I hear what you're saying is like influence, the purpose of gathering it is to deploy it in these same ways, in these efforts toward building a different, more free, liberated world for all of us.
Yeah, and I don't want to be unclear here about the intention behind saying that we have to demand attention. I know that we all have different circumstances and have different backgrounds. It is less safe for some of us than for others. I don't want anyone to think that they have to be doing this at this scale, right? The examples I gave are all massive scale demonstrations. In our work as small business owners, we can do what we can within our own capacities. And I think that work is just as important and just as deep as a lot of the work that goes on a mass level. Because as Angela Davis reminds us, right, like we ourselves often do the work of the state in and through our interior lives. So let's get those straight first. Let's clean those up so that we can come to movement with clarity.
Yeah, exactly. And with a clear understanding of our capacity. Like, we need the huge demonstrations. Like, we need those demands for attention. And we need you, dear listener, out there just like sending your first email ever. And that is also a super important step for all of us. So there's a whole spectrum, and it's related to where we are. And the more we practice, the more our capacity builds. And also, sometimes life shrinks it for us. If you're in a period of grief or you're in a period of loss or illness, you may desire to have a huge capacity to do so much and to have so much attention, but like it's just not possible in your life right now. Like, it's both an inner resource and an outer reality, and we have to live within the fluidity of that. It's maybe what I'm trying to get at here is.
Yeah, and I will say too, like the activist I mentioned earlier, Mona El-Tahawi, who graffitied subway ads, she also says like the most subversive thing a woman can do is to talk about her life as if it really matters, because it does. And I think that's the base of what we're saying here, right? Is like, yes, do mass scale. Also, honor yourself. Let your voice be heard. Say what you must say and ask for what you need, please.
Hello, my lovely listener. Amelia here, interrupting this amazing conversation because if you're enjoying this episode the one you're listening to right now, I think you would really love the Off the Grid Clubhouse. The Clubhouse is a paid podcast, newsletter, and asynchronous community space for friends and fans of Off the Grid hosted on Substack. It's where I share my monthly biz forecasts, bonus episodes about my hot takes, personal feelings, deepest, darkest, brightest, lightest ideas about online business, and more. I also send out a monthly link roundup called The Click Through, where I gather everything that I have been reading, watching, and intrigued by with regards to internet culture, social media happenings, and online business at large. And all of the posts in the Clubhouse have community comment threads where you can ask me questions, share your experiences, and chat with other Off the Grid listeners. It only costs $5 per month or $50 per year to join the fun, and I truly hope that you will head to the show notes and check it out. I look forward to seeing you on Substack, but for now, let's dive back into this conversation. I want to talk about another thing that we can do with attention, which is amplify attention. So last year, you created one of my very favorite resources of all of the stuff I see online. Like, this was one of the ones that I bookmarked and sent to people and loved. And that was your list of 20 ways to amplify attention for under-recognized voices. I love this list, and it feels so connected to what we were just talking about because you've divided the list into these sorts of different amounts of capacity that these different ways to amplify attention require. So there's sort of a low, medium, and high category here. And I will link the full list in the show notes. Everyone should go look at it. Everyone should subscribe to Cher's Substack. I feel very confident making that blanket claim. It is for all of us. But I also want to kind of explore that list together here on the podcast. So could you talk a little bit about why amplifying attention is such an important strategy? And then maybe we could go to some of the practices on the list.
Yeah, it's Dr. Joy Harden Bradford talks about leaving the door open behind us. And I love that image, right? That's what I'm doing. I'm not just going to leave the door open behind me. I'm going to hold your hand and walk you through it. And that's what amplifying attention is for me, right? I don't know any other way to be than to say, hey, my friends are really, really cool and they're so smart. Give us all attention collectively. You need them in your life. That's just, I think, a part of who I am. And so it felt like a very seamless ask to be well, if we have it, we're going to amplify it. We're going to amplify your work. This is a non-negotiable for me. And I think the number one on the list is giving a hat tip or a source mention to people, which I don't know if you've heard, people. I did that a lot in my work because there is a long line of wisdom behind me. And it is a humble thing for me to accept that, right? I feel both I belong to this lineage and that I'm a part of something bigger than myself. And so I think giving people hat tips or source shout outs are just, it's the absolute number one thing you need to do when you are sharing your work, because none of us creates in a silo. And we sometimes pretend that we do, or we were taught that that's how we're supposed to be if we want to look smart. And I just call, oh my God, 100% bullshit on this statement.
Yeah, as you should. I mean, frankly, it's just a hallmark of white supremacist colonial culture to act as if we have invented literally anything at this point in human history. But it is exactly what happens. I mean, you can look to the self-help industry, right, to see these very prominent white authors who are writing these self-help books that just totally steal ideas from other communities or specific individuals even. There's been a big controversy around Mel Robbins' new book, Let Them, that speaks exactly to this. So I think it's important to say that because you start us with sort of amplifying attention is my MO. It's exactly what I always do. It's who I am. It's how I operate. And it feels so clear and natural and innate to you. And also, you're doing that in the face of a culture that absolutely does not operate that way. So it is definitely not the sort of standard operating procedure of online business or capitalism more broadly or our entire overculture in a colonized world. We already started with this, give a hat tip, give a shout out. where you heard about something or learned about something. That is one of your like low capacity practices for amplifying attention. Do you want to share one or two more from that section of the list?
Yeah, I just say, because we're both on Substack, recommending a Substack is a really easy one. That's kind of like reminiscent of MySpace top 8.
Yeah.
And it brings a lot of people to me, and I hope it sends people to the other ones I recommend. I really love Toy Smith's just practice of including quotes from books she's reading or people who have said really smart, inspiring things in her newsletter at the very top. That has introduced a whole spectrum of education to me. It has opened up a lot of doors for me, and I copy her. I do the same thing now. So that's one that I really love. And I'm also the kind of person who like commonplaces everything. So I got quotes. I got a lot of quotes. Did you have one that you loved on the first list?
Yeah, I mean, so many that I love, but to what you're saying, I mean, the examples you're pointing to, they're just ways of sort of building like Sarah Ahmed says that citation is a feminist practice. And so citing each other's work is actually how we create a sort of intellectual community around us. And her argument is kind of like, okay, we need to be citing each other's work, but also, especially because she's coming out of philosophy, don't just cite dead rich white dudes. Like actually cite, in her instance, like other women of color feminists, or cite your peers, cite your friends, cite the people whose work you want to uplift, not just like the most popular work out there. And you can do that just by putting the quotes in your email. You can do that just by putting that like H/T hat tip, which I want to say that because I didn't know what that meant for years. Like when I saw it in things, I was like, what is this? So if you see someone write H/T, it's hat tip. Like this is where they learned it from. They're tipping their hat to this person for introducing them to it. So that always stands out to me in the examples on this list. I also think that it sounds so silly. This is the one I'm going to pick. But number 2 on your list is just sharing an episode, a quote, or an insight with a friend. I think it's so important to just do this direct sharing. And it can feel a little vulnerable sometimes. Like if you really like something and you send it to somebody and then they like don't respond, which I 100% has happened to me. And then you're like, oh, I guess they didn't care about it. Or like, I guess they didn't care about my opinion enough to read this thing or something. Like I start telling these stories in my head because I've made kind of a bid for attention that I am perceiving got rejected. And I think that it's just so important to do that anyway. And you'll find your people who that's their thing. Like with some of my friends, I've just learned that like the link share is not their love language. Like they're super happy to get a 9-minute voice message from me, but they would prefer I never sent them another link again. And that's fine. I mean, this isn't true for everyone, but I think like finding your people that you can share things with and continuing to share and practicing that's like my favorite one on this list. And I will also say the other thing that people don't do anymore that I have been doing recently is like, be your own street team. Like you have an event coming up, text it to 10 people. Or your friend has an event coming up, send it to everybody you know in that area. So with this one, like a recent example for me is that my friend, Caro, who's like a longtime friend of mine, was hosting an event in Chicago, but she doesn't live there anymore, and I don't live there anymore. But she was still like, do you know anybody there who might want to come to this thing? And I was like, I don't know. Let me see. And I just sent it to like 6 or 8 friends. I just texted it to them. And one of them, who was a musician, wrote back and was just like, I can't go to this, but I love that you're street teaming so hard for this person, even when you don't live here anymore. And I was like, yeah, like that is the energy I want to bring to things. And it just took a text message to a couple of people. And it was very low stakes. I was like, hey, you might like this. I have no clue if you're in town, but I'm trying to help a friend out. So here's the link.
Yeah, I'm adopting that language. Street team energy is like where I want to live.
Yes. I mean, my introduction to it was in the music world. And when I was at the radio station that I volunteered with in Chicago, where I learned how to podcast, we would have all these events and you could like go, they had a street teaming crew and you like go pick up a packet of flyers and you'd have a list of like, here are all of the coffee shops to stop in, the sort of like poles to hang the flyers on, like go grab this neighborhood and street team it and like put all of the stuff up so people see it and hear about it and will come to the event. And similarly, I do it in my little like more direct, like, okay, here's my little list of everyone I know who still lives in Chicago. Let me send the texts to them. And it's such a fun practice. But as I'm saying this, I also realize like There are a lot of things in me that come up that make me want to not do it. And like, I don't do it for my own work. I'll do it for my friend's work because I really want her to succeed. Like, I love you, Carol. I want your event to go well. But this is, again, it's like, that's why it becomes the amplification of attention. Like, I'm trying to amplify it for someone else. But all those stories we tell from the very beginning of our conversation, right? Like, I shouldn't be asking for attention. I shouldn't be seeking attention. If I put myself out there and they don't respond, then I have all these narratives around rejection. And that keeps me from trying it again. And we also have a lot of stories around social cues, right? Where people are like, well, I didn't respond to 2 of your texts. Like, why are you still texting me? Like, all of that lives in our head rent free when we think about sending an episode or an event to a friend. But it's still worth getting over those stories and like doing it anyway, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's practice. Like when I was trying to rebuild community as a single parent in a new area where I live now, I thought like, I either have to risk rejection or I'm going to be alone. There's not a lot of options here. And so I had to get really fluent in making those bids and accepting that whatever outcome happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's practice, and we need that practice to develop the fluency of the skill.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Okay. I feel like my street team via text example kind of took us into the medium capacity list, but Cher, what are some of your favorite examples from this part of the list? Like if you have a little more capacity than just sort of like linking or sending a text, what might you do to amplify attention for other folks?
Yeah, I love a childcare trade. And this is because, again, like I have a little bit of support here, but my family's not here. And I've had to rebuild community from the ground up. And I have some friends who are also entrepreneurs, and I want their work to succeed as well. And I want their families to feel safe and resourced. And so once a month, maybe twice a month, I will sit at the kitchen table and I will do work, or they'll sit at mine and they'll do work, and our kids love each other. And so it feels like a double whammy. I'm like, man, I am building community. I'm building lifelong, deep relationships, and I'm getting this stuff done and helping them get stuff done too. And like that just, my heart, so much joy in situations like these.
I love that so much. And it's reminding me of this thing that I heard from, I think, a mutual friend of ours, Becky Mollenkamp of Feminist Founders. So shout out to Becky, was talking about like a mastermind that she was a part of. And I think it was like something like 4 or 6 business owners. I don't quite remember. But basically, when they would do their mastermind group, like you could show up and have a question or something for the group, or you could have like a request that everybody kind of like co-work on something with and for you in the group. And I was like, oh, this has literally never occurred to me. Like, I'm so comfortable asking my biz friends and peers to like talk through an idea with me, but I would never ask them to like help me make some graphics. And then I was like, why not? Like, why wouldn't I? Like, if it's going to be the same, 30 minutes we're spending together, of course I wouldn't do that without their consent. Like, it's really important that everyone has opted into this. But I was just this sudden realization for me when I was listening to that. I was like, oh, there are these like real practical material ways that we can like show up and support each other if we're already planning to share time. And this reminds me of the childcare trade example as well.
Yes, I am also going to steal that. Thanks, Becky.
Yeah, it's so smart. Like what it reminds me is that we're also conditioned, like in addition to the ways we're told we're allowed to ask for attention, there are also ways we're told we're allowed to ask for help. And they may not actually be the things that we really need help with. And I think this is where like a childcare trade also comes in, because many people may offer to like help a small business owner do something in their business. But if what that person actually needs is for their kid to be taken care of for 2 hours so they can do it, like that's the help that needs to be able to be asked for. But we may have this like sort of messaging or just like straight up rules that we can't ask for the help we actually need in that instance.
Yeah, it's like when new mothers need a shower and you bring her like muslin cloth for her baby and you're like, I don't need this. I need a nap, please.
Yes, exactly. 100%. There's some other great examples in this medium category that I highly recommend folks go look at and check out. But let's move on to the sort of more high capacity opportunities for amplifying attention. So Cher, what are a couple of things from this section of the list that are standing out to you right now?
Yeah, I'll give you a mild example and then a spicy example.
Great.
So I think that on a mild level, I love pitching people together. So when I'm pitching myself, I'll sometimes include it directly in the pitch, or I'll include it as a PS. Like, you haven't met Amelia yet and you need to. Like, she hits your vibes here, here, and here. I will introduce you to. And I feel like that's a really powerful way to say, I have an idea of what you might need. Here's this person and here's why she's incredible. Here's how you can work with her, or here's how you can talk to her on your show, for example. My spicier example is, I think that when you are a speaker and you have a little bit of power in this arena, that when you speak on panels or at events, you can put in your contract, like, hey, I'm only going to do this if you up your percentage of people who are diverse speakers from like 15 to 25. Also, I'm just not uninterested. I'm not going to be here representing your free platform. And I love that that's more of like the demanding attention. It's amplification and demand.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really powerful example. This, again, is why I think it's so important to acknowledge the power that we have as we grow an audience, as we garner more attention for our work. I find even in myself sometimes, like as my audience gets bigger, I have this instinct to like self-deprecate and diminish and sort of like disavow that I have power. There's this like impulse in me that's like, no. I'm still just like just doing my little podcast over here. Like, not a big deal. But I've really been trying to like pause myself in those moments and be like, okay, sure, I don't have like the top number one podcast in the world, but like I have grown an audience. My task is to step into this power so that I can actually be sharing the influence, doing all these things that we're talking about here. Like, if I haven't reckoned with my relationship to that influence, I can't do any of this stuff meaningfully or well, at least. And so what I love about that latter example you just gave is like, it really, like, you have to own your power in that negotiation. You have to step into your influence and you have to make a demand. And yeah, that might seem scary or horrifying, or you might lose the spot. But like, if it's more aligned with your values and it's important enough to you, then that is what you'll do.
Yeah, a lot of us sit in this space of like, oh, I don't want to be rejected. But we forget that we also reject, right? We have the power to reject others in situations that don't serve us. And again, it's that power differential. We forget we have power because we're kind of uncomfortable with it. Same, also.
Yeah. And it's always this, again, like the both and, right, of like understanding the ways that we have been structurally, systematically, and personally discriminated against, oppressed, victimized, etc. And also being willing to like do the healing work to move through that and step into the power that comes on the other side of that. Like, it's a journey. So we're not here to judge anyone or at your point in the journey, but like that is the purpose of the work. And it is work.
Truer words have never been said.
Yeah, I know. I think I've said this multiple times on the podcast this season, but it's like, yeah, your work gets more recognition, your audience grows, and then you just have new and different problems at this stage, right? And there's so much joy and there's so much power in the best ways for all of this. So, okay, I feel like I could definitely talk through like 20 more things on this list. I guess there's only 20 on the list. I would love to talk through every one of them, but I want people to just go read the list, experiment, and practice both doing it for the attention and asking for the attention and amplifying the attention for under-recognized voices. And I always like to say, I know you say this, Cher, like to everyone listening, like your voice might be the under-recognized voice. And so don't discount yourself in this process of amplifying attention. And any of these ways on this list, most of them can be flipped so that you're recruiting other people into amplifying your voice, if that's what's needed, right? It's not just that you have to like do all your solo work building your audience so that you can then go be like of service to all these other people's work. We're definitely not, like, speaking from my own positioning here, I'm not white savioring this attention situation. But it is also that I think most people listening to this, your own voice is under-recognized. And how can you think of your voice in community with all of the other voices? And how can we be doing this work together? It's about all of us.
I just think that requires a long exhale.
Yeah.
Appreciate your smart brain and your big heart.
I mean, same. I appreciate your smart brain and your big heart. Amazing. Okay, Cher, can you tell folks where they can find you and how they can work with you if they want more of your wisdom in their life and their work?
Yeah, so I never said which is funny as a publicist to make this mistake, is that my agency is called Ginkgo Public Relations. So you can find me at Ginkgo, GINKGOPR.com. And then the other place is just the Substack. Like, that's where I play. That's where I have the most fun. It is a blast, and I hope you can come join me there. It's called fortheattention.substack.com. That's the URL.
Beautiful. That will all be linked in the show notes. And dear listener, come ask us for our attention. This is your official invitation to ask, request, maybe even demand, if you're feeling spicy, our attention around something. We welcome it and we cheer you on in all of the practices that we have mentioned here today. So thank you again, Cher. Thank you, everybody who's tuned in. And until next time, we will see you off the grid. Thanks for listening to Off the Grid. Don't forget to grab your free Leaving Social Media toolkit at offthegrid.fun/toolkit. This podcast is a Softer Sounds production. Our music is by Melissa Caitlin Carter of Making Audio Magic, and our logo is by Natelier Studio. I'm your host, Amelia Ruby, and until next time, I'll see you off the grid and on the interweb.
Let's go off the grid. Okay. Let's go off the grid. Okay. I know that you really